Greetings again from the lovely Oxford University Museum of Natural History in this sunny day here, 9:40 UK time. This is session number 5 of the 64th annual meeting of the Palaeontological Association, and will be based on flash talks. We have five flash talks of 5 minutes each. And at the end of the session, we'll have joint questions and answers. So please keep all your questions coming in the chat, and please mark your questions as such using clicking on the red circle at the right side of wherever you are typing of your question. Please remember that in case you experience any connection issues, there's a button on the top of the screen that you can press, and hopefully that will take care of the issues, of the connection issues. All right, I believe I've covered the basics now, and we're going to start with our first speaker, who recorded a video for us, and she's Andrea Guerrero, and I will now proceed to start her video. Andrea is from the Universidad Nacional de Educación a Distancia, in case we don't have that in the video. And I will leave you with the video right now. Let's hope if this...
Good morning. Hello, everyone. My name is Andrea Guerrero, and I will present the work titled Characterization of Intraspecific Variation of the European Stem Turtle Pleurosternon bullockii Paracryptodira. Okay, let's begin. Pleurosternon bullockii corresponds to the very representative member of Pleurosternidae, which is a relatively diverse lineage of aquatic basal turtles identified in both North America and Europe. This species is especially represented by abundant postcranial material, mainly shells from the various levels of the Pérez-García subgroup, found in several localities of UK, being also present in the late Jurassic of that country and France. However, despite the high number of individuals and that most of them were found more than a century ago, the vast majority remaining hitherto unpublished. Therefore, knowledge about this species, which is the reference taxon for Pleurosternidae, was relatively limited and had hardly been updated. Specifically, this lack of accurate studies has not allowed the characterization of the high morphological variability present in Pleurosternon bullockii. As a consequence, numerous erroneous interpretations of the anatomy of its shell, generally motivated by the current poor knowledge about this form, are present in the literature. In this context, a detailed study of the morphological variability of Pleurosternon bullockii is treated here. About 60 well-preserved complete and partial shells belonging to the mature stage have been analyzed through the collections of several museums of UK. The great sample size, as well as its good preservation, not only allowed for their proper characterization from qualitative observations, but also through a quantitative approach. Specifically, a geometric morphometric approach has been applied to describe the shape variability in the shell of Pleurosternon bullockii, through which has been performed several statistical analyses. In this case, to understand how morphological variability works on the mature stage of Pleurosternon bullockii, this study is focused on the interindividual variation, that's to say, polymorphisms and sexual dimorphism. The analysis revealed that most of the morphological variation can be explained by polymorphisms, which are recognized in several elements of the shell. The evaluation of the morphological variability through principal component analysis proved to be a useful exploratory statistical technique to simplify the variables of conformation in the directions of the highest variation. In this case, the neural plates are the elements with more variation among specimens of Pleurosternon bullockii. The regression analysis also resulted to be a useful statistical analysis as a predictive model to evaluate the relationship between shape and size variables. In this sense, only the shape differences of the first and last neurals and also that of the first suprapical were shown to be influenced by the size factor. Thus, the percentage of size variation that accounts for these shape differences is attributed to individual variability, since these plates are not recognized as sexually dimorphic. Likewise, individuals with similar shell sizes can present plates with different sizes. Therefore, such variation in size does not appear to be either mainly the result of ontogenetic variation. Sexual shape dimorphism as well as sexual size dimorphism are the two factors most used to identify the expression of sexual dimorphism in the fossil taxa. Considering the preservation of the specimens analyzed here, sexual shape dimorphism was evaluated with one of the major indicators of sexual selection for fossil turtles, the xiphioplastral shape and size, which corresponds to the most posterior plate of the ventral carapace or plastron. In this study, the application of geometric morphometry allowed the distinction of two main morphotypes. The results of the principal component analysis indicate that the morphology of the anal notch as well as the xiphioplastral processes are the most dominant character in the sexual shape differences of this taxon, which is also heavily supported by Procrustes ANOVA and cluster analysis. These differences that distinguish both morphotypes in Pleurosternon bullockii coincide with those reported in the literature as sexual dimorphic characters for clades of both extant and extinct aquatic turtles. In this case, the sexual size dimorphism in the xiphioplastral area plays an insignificant role in explaining the component of shape variation in the study taxon. In conclusion, the detailed study of Pleurosternon bullockii allows us to characterize the interindividual variability of the major stage of this form through qualitative and quantitative approach. The integration of this analysis provides an innovative perspective relative to the previous morphological studies about this lineage of Mesozoic turtles. Also, a great number of polymorphic characters are recognized in several elements of the shell of Pleurosternon bullockii, the neural series being the region with more variability. The study conducted here also provides an approach to the interpretation of sexual dimorphism in Pleurosternon bullockii, which has never been analyzed for Pleurosternidae. Two morphotypes are distinguished based on the anal notch morphology and width and the relative development of xiphioplastral processes. That's all. Thank you very much for your attention, and for any questions or suggestions, you can contact me via Twitter or email. Thank you very much.
All right, so that was Andrea's presentation, flash talk. Do send her any questions that might have arisen during this talk to her directly. I'm sure she'll be happy to answer. All right, so our next speaker today will be Sam Coatham. Sam, all right, how are you?
Hiya, I'm good, cheers.
All right, nice. So we're gonna upload your presentation right now. And there it is. Take it away.
Great. All right, good morning, everybody. My name's Sam Coatham. I'm a PhD student at the Uni of Manchester, and I'm going to be discussing estimating body segment parameters in mammals using convex hulls. The slides have turned out very weird, haven't they? Sorry about this. So multi-body dynamics analysis is a frequently used tool in paleontology. It's becoming increasingly frequent. It's an engineering technique, which is where the body is treated as a set of rigid components, which allows analysis of the kinematics of the animal's motion. But in order for this to be accurately carried out, it's important to have accurate values of the body segment parameters. So these are the mass and inertia properties of each functional segment in the body. So it comprises 10 total values. So it's the mass, the free coordinates of the center of mass, and the free moments and the free products of inertia for every functional segment. So for example, in the leg, you've got the thigh, the shank, and the foot. And these are reasonably straightforward to calculate in extant taxa based on their soft tissue. However, obviously, this often isn't possible in extinct animals. So we have to find more indirect methods to approximate these values. So we're going to be discussing using convex hulls. Sorry, I did change the PowerPoint. But yeah, so we're going to be discussing using convex hulls. So convex hulls are mathematically derived objects which enclose a segment with a convex object, which is the smallest possible convex object. So these are really, really quick to compute, and their objectives, they require no manual user input beyond the articulation of the initial specimen. However, they are biologically naive, so they require validation with extant taxa to justify their usage to find biological values. So we set out here to validate their usage for estimating parameters in mammals. So our methods are here. We produced a database of 32 extant mammal species from 9 different orders, which so we got full body CT scans of each species. We and split these into skin and skeletal functional segments. As you can see, well, you can't really see on this slide. This is meant to be a night monkey. You can just about see the impressions. So we split these into their functional segments. So we split into obviously 3 in each of the legs and the arms, and a variety of the axial segments as well. And then once we had this, we then calculated convex holes based on their skeletal segments. So you can see at the bottom of the screen here, just about, you've got the convex hole and the skin segments, and the convex holes roughly approximate the skin values. And we were able to calculate the body segment parameters of these segments using the open source modeling software Coatham. Now we've got the parameter values, we wanted to assess how effectively the holes had reconstructed the parameters. So we performed regressions comparing the body segment parameters from between the holes and the skin segments for each different segment for each parameter. So it's 10 parameters in 13 segments, and so it's 130 total regressions. And you also can't really see it. We found extremely strong predictive relationships in almost all of the cases. It was 130 regressions, 90% had R-squared values of 0.8 or higher, suggesting that convex holes are extremely consistent at predicting body segment parameters in mammals. We used our regressions, used the coefficients to produce regression equations, which informs the conversion from the convex hole body segment parameters to those values for the skin segments. And we are making these freely available, and we strongly recommend their usage in future volumetric reconstruction of extinct mammals and any biomechanical analyses, and we plan to use them as well. I'm sorry about the technical issues here, but thank you very much, everybody. Cheers.
Thank you, Sam. We're actually able to see, in my case, I've been actually able to see your slides perfectly. Full definition. So it might have been only on your screen. Yeah, so sorry about that.
That's all right.
That's never the perfect situation when presenting. But yeah, please keep your questions coming in the chat for Sam. Much appreciated. And we'll move on to the next speaker now, because that's the kind of pace of the Flash Talks, right? Show must go on. And now our next speaker is Patricia Carro-Rodriguez. Patricia, how are you?
Hello, everyone.
All right, so this is your presentation. Cuando quieras.
So, hi, everyone. My name is Patricia. I'm a PhD student from Universidad Complutense de Madrid, and I'm presenting the morphological evolution in the tribe Cricetodontini during the Miocene. This tribe, it's a group of extinct Cricetids, first recorded during the lower Miocene in Anatolia. I'm going to focus in 3 different genera. As you can see in the table, this genera reached its maximum development during the middle Miocene. They became extinct at the end of the upper Miocene. These genera are described based on the morphological traits of the upper first molar or M1. The most notable differences among these genera are the anterocone morphology, the development on the ectolobes, the outline morphology, and the height of the crown. So for the first time, we want to analyze and measure the outline morphology of 53 species from this tribe from Asia and Europe. So the geometric morphometric analysis consists in the digitation of 64 equally spaced points around the occlusal surface of this upper first molar. You can see them in red points on the image. With this set of coordinates, we apply the Fourier transformation and obtain the Fourier coefficients or harmonic series. With this data, we will perform the rest of the analysis. On the one hand, we perform a principal component analysis with the mean values of the Fourier coefficients, and on the other hand, we will perform a scatter plot. Here you have the principal component analysis. The 2 principal components gathers the 76% of variation. In this scatter plot, we could recognize 2 different groups, one with the species of Cricetodon with straight outlines, and the other with the species of Hispanomis and Byzantinia with trilobed outline. But I marked some arrows on this scatter plot because some of the species do not follow their generic pattern of the genera. This is because some of the species of Cricetodon present more tree-lofted outline. Some of these species has a generic assignation that is preliminary, so a systematic revision is required. Some of the species of Hispanomis present a more straight outline than the rest. This is because during the Middle Miocene they present a mosaic morphology, and due to the scarce material we had of some of the species, their position in the principal component analysis have to be taken with caution. As I said before, we perform a scatter plot to visualize the change between the size and the first principal component. We perform this scatter plot at a specimen level. On it, we could recognize 4 different groups attending to the size. On one hand, we have larger and smaller sizes, and attending to the negative or positive values of the PC1. On the negative values of the PC1, we'll have most of the species of Cricetodon and Hispanomis with a straight outline and differences in the morphology on the anterocone. We have wider and narrower morphologies. The anterocone is the structure circle in black. On the positive values of the PC1, we have most of the species of Hispanomis and Byzantinia with tree-lofted outline. These species have differences among the anterocone as the rest of them. We have a greater or less development on the anterocone. So in conclusion, elliptic Fourier analysis is a great tool to define the outline of the upper first molar of these 53 species of the tribe Cricetodontini. The principal component analysis distributed the species attending to the outline morphologies. 2 types of outline have been described, straight for Cricetodon and tree-loft for Hispanomis and Byzantinia. Some of the species included in this genera do not follow the usual outline pattern due to the scarce material or generic determination issues. When included the size on the analysis, the studied material is distributed among 4 morphological groups, attending as defined by different occlusal characteristics. And finally, pod analysis, where they are included the rest representative of the tribe as Rodentia, are required to better understand the morphological evolution of these taxa. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Patricia, for that wonderful presentation. It seems that I cannot activate my camera right now for some connection issues, but oh, there it is. So thank you, Patricia. And please keep your questions for Patricia coming up in the chat, and we'll tackle them at the questions and answer session. Our next speaker is Chris Stocky. Chris?
Hiya.
Hey, how are you doing?
Good, thanks. You?
All right, good, not bad. We'll start your presentation right now, and take it away.
Okay, fantastic, thank you. So diet is a core component of any organism's ecology, and despite that, it's very poorly constrained for the vast majority of extinct taxa. And that's because in paleontology, we lack a quantitative, robust tool for inferring diet outside of gnatostome vertebrates. And secondarily to that, a method that could allow the combination of gnatostome vertebrates and non-gnatostome vertebrates in a single analysis, allowing us to look at dietary ecology through an ecosystem level lens. And despite this, we see quantitative differences of diet within the fossil record based on convergent evolution of functional morphologies. So you can see here on the left of your screen a vertebrate, herbivorous molar and carnivorous adaptations to a carnivorous diet, 2 molars and orthopteran mandibles in the center that have similar functional morphologies, both adapted to overlapping dietary ranges. And this leads to ideas and hypotheses surrounding things like scalecodonts on the right-hand side of this screen with different morphologies. These represent functional adaptations to different dietary as well. And here we present a method that could offer a hypothesis testing framework for this and fill these 2 gaps in the paleontological toolbox. So quantitative measures of 3D tooth morphology, also known as dietary ecometrics, have been used successfully in vertebrates to recover the relationship between diet and functional morphology. And this has led to their use in the immediate vertebrate fossil record and making assumptions about the diets of unknown species. And these include things such as surface complexity, which increases with the amount of tough, normally grass or herbivorous diet component in an organism's diet, and also things that measure quantitative, such as surface slope, angularity, which is measuretedness, 3D to 2D surface area ratio, and sharpness, which all increase with the relative proportion of soft plant-based or carnivorous meat-based diet forms. And the real great thing about these, they've all been hypothesized to be usable regardless of the feeding element structure that you're analyzing, be that a vertebrate molar or an invertebrate mandible or an aphtha-based. And secondarily, that the absolute values of these ecometrics can then be compared directly regardless of the feeding element structures and incorporated into a signal study. And that also by analyzing a number of these in a multivariate space, you can better capture the full 3D morphology of a feeding element structure. So we tested the first hypothesis to whether or not these dietary ecometrics can work outside of naphtha vertebrates, in which had previously only been tested, by applying to 45 grasshopper and cricket mandibles, as you saw on the first slide. And you can see through this PCA maneuver that they do successfully recover the relationship between functional morphology and diet, not only between herbivores and carnivores, but additionally between different forms of herbivory, which are split depending on the relative proportion of the harder and softer plant-based matter that comprise the organism's diet. Additionally, the principal component 1, when taken as an ecometric, correlates in the same predictable manner you see in vertebrates. So with a more pointed tooth-based structure, as you move across PC1 to the right, you get a higher proportion of soft plants and fauna comprising your diet, and a higher degree of surface complexities associated again with grass-based or tough herbivorous diets. And most of these ecometrics do correlate significantly with phylogenetic closeness, but this is a much, much weaker signal than we see here, as it is with the increased dietary hardness or toughness, and therefore we conclude that it is a predominantly ecological signal. So then we assessed whether or not, as we now know that this can apply to invertebrate fossil records to deduce differences in diet, whether or not these ecometrics can allow meaningful comparisons between distantly related taxa with different dietary or different feeding elements. So we did that by incorporating a vertebrate data set that had been published previously into our invertebrate analysis. So this is a single PCA that we've only split between vertebrates and invertebrates to increase readability. And you can see quite clearly that there's the same relationship between the dietary hardness and principal component 1 moving left along principal component 1, moving from tough grass-based diets through to softer plants and then into carnivorous forms. Again, also recovering the relationship between insects and vertebrate-based diets here, where chitinous exoskeletons are tougher than soft flesh. And an LDA trained by these vertebrates can correctly predict 76% of the diets in orthoptions, so the cricket and grasshopper mandibles, as carnivorous or herbivorous 76% of the time. And this shows that there's even though they're very phylogenetically disparate or distanced, and they're completely different feeding elements, these dietary ecometrics can be used to infer diet, at least to some degree, in unknowns, regardless of phylogenetic affinity, which hopefully this demonstrates to you that these dietary ecometrics offer a perfect opportunity to fill these holes in the paleobiological toolbox, allowing inferences to be made in the invertebrate fossil record and the non-Neanderthal vertebrate fossil record, and also allow us to look at ecology, dietary ecology, through an ecosystem level lens, regardless of age, locality, and time period. And obviously it's a very quick talk and it's quite a long study, so please do get in contact with me through email or Twitter if you have any further questions, or ask them now. Thank you very much.
Great. Chris, thanks so much for that talk. And thank you all the speakers for their discipline with the timing. We really appreciate it. We know it's very difficult to cramp everything together into 5 minutes. So many headaches, time spent in front of a screen or with samples condensed in 5 minutes. So much appreciated. All right, so some questions that have been popping up in the chat. for you guys, question for Sam. So do you separate out carnivores and herbivores? I believe herbivores should keep a higher relative mass because of their lifestyle. And this attendee was wondering if you've been looking at this.
Yes, so yeah, I agree. Just looking at the specimens, there probably was a mass difference between them, but we were basically aiming for just a general mammals database with the largest possible sample size, so we haven't split between them here. But body segment parameters have proven fairly resistant. Like, some variation in parameters doesn't have like a giant impact on dynamics analyses, as long as the results are in the close enough ballpark. So we deemed it to be not too significant an impact on this. If you were going to do mass reconstructions on purely one taxon, I'd recommend doing a specific validation data of just very closely related extant taxa, as has been done with dodos and Australopithecus before, and that was done with the Thylacine recently as well.
Thank you, Sam. Sorry about that. That little panic. We're having some connection issues right now here, so that's why you guys cannot see our videos probably. We'll try to get that sorted. All right, so next question we have here from the chat for Patricia. What was the effect of feeding and dietary adaptations considered as potentially affecting the molar outline?
Yes, the dietary adaptation of these Cricetidae affect the outline morphology. And that's why we want to add the youngest species of this tribe, Rastenomys, because it presents the highest crown of the tribe. And we can see, but we didn't measure, this height of the crown makes the outline more narrow. And now we have a publication about the mandible of other species of extinct Cricetidae that demonstrate there are a relation between the mandible and the feeding behavior and the molar of these mandibles.
Thank you. Okay, we seem to have another time for another question here. I can see another question for Sam. Are you taking phylogeny into account in your regressions using PGLS or similar?
Yeah, we did. Sorry, I didn't mention that. So we did both PGLS and ordinarily scaled regressions for everyone. And we compared them using Akaki's information criterion. The AISD values were slightly lower for the OLSs, but we're going to report both, and they'll both be included in the paper. But they showed very similar results in general.
Thank you. All right. I don't seem to see any more questions for you guys, but conversely, many expressions of celebration and joy for your talks. So that's much appreciated. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending to the session. And the next one, actually, we have two parallel sessions upcoming now, 6A and 6B, in about 5 minutes. That is 10:20 UK time. And only would like to thank again all the speakers for their wonderful presentations and accurate timing. And thank you again. Remember that in order to enter in the new sessions, you need to click in a new link for that. So that's all for me. Thanks again.